So hi guys, I am going to show you how to use some of the watercolor techniques that you have used if you were following the last 3 videos that I posted. The last one you should have done was this one, and this one showed you all these different techniques. Well, now I'm going to do some little holiday card designs and kind of show you how to use some of these techniques. So, to get started, to make some little cards, I took a sheet from my sketchbook and I kind of carefully, it's easier if you pull it out by this part first, the whole sheet. And then I folded it at that little edge where it's serrated and smoothed it out and then carefully kind of tore it off. And then if you want to make nice card size, if you fold this in half, oops, and if you don't want to make cards, you can just do these little practice designs in your sketchbook. It was kind of fun to make cards. So I just folded my sheet in half and then I cut along that line to have 2 pieces of paper to make 2 cards. So these are kind of fun, and moms and grandmas and aunts and uncles and grandpas, they like that stuff. So there I have 2 cards. Now I've sketched some designs out that I'm going to show you how to do. So I have already lightly drawn some designs for this one. I took a round little cup and I traced around it to get my ornament. These I just sketched up. I found the ideas online and just kind of adapted them for myself. So the first one, I'm not going to draw anything on first. I am going to, let me get everything over here where you can see it better. I'm going to do some of those overlapping strokes of color to make a little kind of a wreath-like design. So we'll see how this comes out, because I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it yet. So let's make up some different greens. And you know how to mix colors. You know that if you are making a lighter version of the color, you just add more water to it. So I'm going to start with a really kind of a bright green. You may need a little more than that. Because I want this one to kind of stand out a little more. I should have softened my paints. Remember to drop some water into your paints before you start, because I haven't used these for a few days, so they've kind of hardened up mostly. Something I don't know if I've said is leave your watercolor palette out and open to dry somewhere, and then they won't get as gooey as they sometimes do. All right, so I'm going to do a little kind of a wreath design around the border of this, and I could put something inside it if I wanted to, maybe turn it this way. So let's do some of this random little leaf designs. I don't really have a plan too much for this one. I'm just going to try first with my most farthest back kind of leaves. And maybe do a little one down here. So just kind of winging it. All right, now I'm going to do a darker green. I don't want it quite that bright though, so if we add a complementary color, green's complement is red. I can tone that green down a little bit so it's not so vivid. I might get it too dark. We'll see. I can always add back a little more green to it. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go between these and do some lighter, I think I'll make it a little bluish. Some little bluish green leaves. More water because I want them light. I'm just going to do some, okay, I'll turn it so I can do that stroke where you pull your brush and kind of come up so that you get a pointy effect. And see, it's drying pretty fast because it's not really where they're overlapping. Okay. And do some different little, maybe like pine needles. Doesn't have to be all the same, doesn't have to be symmetrical. But I'm going over top of those other colors. That's the beauty with watercolor. You can usually go over the top of what you're creating, as long as you do your lights first. Let's see. All right. Okay, now I'm going to add some red berries to it, kind of like holly or something. Maybe I need a few more little, let's do a couple places where I add those berries, like little branch type things. Okay, it gives me some places to put them. All right, and I'm just going to take some really bold red and go in and add my little berries. If they bleed back into the stems a little bit, that's all right. You can just kind of random whatever you want to. And my water's getting kind of green, so I'm going to switch it out here in just a little bit. So, there's my little kind of a wreath. I could go in here with a pen and write Merry Christmas or some holiday greeting there, but I'm going to lay that one aside to dry. So, easy peasy. Now this one I drew out. I'm going to show you some wet in wet. Remember, wet in wet is when you have a wet surface and you drop some color into it. So I saw a little design that kind of would lend itself to that. So I'm going to fill my tree with just water first. I'm just wetting the surface and trying to be careful here and go kind of inside my tree design. But if I go out a little bit, you really wouldn't have to draw it. You could just kind of paint the shape you want on there. And I'm going to bring it down here so that I can just kind of float it in down at the bottom. So I'm going to just make this kind of a rainbow tree. I'm going to start at the top with my red. Ooh, look at that. You can go back and if you missed a spot. You can sharpen up the edges if you want it to be a little sharper. Now let's do some orange. And then float it into the corners. And see how it's doing kind of weird things down there? That's cool. Go ahead and leave some of that. That yellow. And going in color wheel order. You can go in and put some more water on it if you want to. Some places make it swirl around a bit more. And some green. I don't know how this is going to look. We'll see. Now, if I want it to blend a little more there between the green and the yellow, get a little bit of yellow green. I can go in there and add a little more yellow to that area or whatever. And then I'm going to do some blue. And a little bit of purple. We'll just go with all the colors. Now remember, it will fade a little bit. Oh, I like what the purple's doing down there. It's kind of making blobby areas. Now remember, you keep some tissues handy, or toilet paper, or something that you can go in and kind of dab a little. If you get a little puddle somewhere, you think it's going to run around places you don't want it. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry a little bit and come, well, you know what, I can just finish it now, I think. You may want to let it dry a little bit. I'm going to put a little star, a golden star on top, which I kind of sketched out. And that will be my card. Now I could come back to it later, we may revisit it and maybe add some Sharpie marker or something to it. But I'm just going to let that go, set it aside for now. So this is a little snowman face, if you can see him. It's just half his head, the carrot, a little bit of a smile. And what I'm mainly going to do is paint a background for him. My water's dark, but my background's going to be dark. So I'm going to work this quickly because what I'm going to do is add salt or alcohol. Let's see if I have my rubbing alcohol handy. Well, I don't know where it is at the moment, but you can do either one. But I think the salt will be nice because it'll give it a frosty look. So I'm going to just paint water on first, kind of lightly. Get it around good. Then I'm going to go carefully around my snowman's head and nose. So I'm actually doing the sky here first. And remember, we're reserving the white of the snowman's face, his head, and that's how you use that. Okay, let's do, that looks like a little bit blue-green, so let's do blue. And let it spread up here around him. Oops. So you can go back and put that color wherever you want it, up around the snowman's head, up around his face. You could change this, you could put a hat on him. Now, this is when I've got to work this pretty quickly if I want to use the salt technique, because this paper tends to dry. If you have watercolor paper, it's usually a little bit better because it doesn't dry quite as fast for you. It also doesn't wrinkle, and if you're having trouble with it wrinkling, you might want to like take some masking tape and tape it down. Oh, there, that's good. I'm going to get some purple sky in there too. Okay, I'm going to blend my blues down a little bit more. I'm not going to worry about this too much because it's just going to look like a cloudy night sky. And now I'm going to, while it's still wet, this is using that salt technique, I'm going to sprinkle some salt into it. Now, you don't want it covering it. You just want to put some in, and hopefully it's going to create kind of a star effect. If you can't control it, put a little in your hand and you'll do better with that. So we'll let that dry. We'll come back to it, see what it's doing here in a little bit. I'll lay it off to the side here, or up above, and we'll work on a different one. All right, so I have a little Santa hat here to show you some layering of color and some adding of shadows. So obviously, Santa's hat is red, but I'm actually going to make it a little bit of a light red to start with. Adding more water, because I want to give it some dimension. I don't want it just to be flat looking. So I'm going to paint over all the red area with my kind of pink. I may need to make that just a little bit darker because remember I told you they dry. It dries lighter. So let's darken it just a little bit more. Okay. And I'll dry that with the hairdryer real quickly so I can move on. Okay, so it's pretty dry now. So I'm going to go back now with a deeper, darker red, more paint, less water. And printed out some of my ideas here. And I'm going to just go in and put a little bit of shading over this side. Now, if you put that on while it's dry, it'll stay a little bit so you can see it there. You could also float it in while it's wet, and then it would give it a softer edge. But it's kind of up to you. A little bit over here too. To make it look like it's got wrinkles in it. It's just sitting there on the table. And I'll let that, I'll speed dry it for us. And now I'm going to go in and just define that. I'm going to use just a little bit of black and a lot of red. And go in there and darken that crease just a little bit. Make a little more shading there, and a little more here. Okay. Then we can, so now I've got a hat that looks kind of 3D. I need to get some space here, and remember you have your little white circular palette like this, so if you're running out of space, you need to mix colors. Use that. Now I want to make the fur look, the furry, make it look a little bit 3D. You could use black. I'm going to use kind of a blue black. Ooh, that's a lot of black. Black you need less of because it turns things really quick. I'm going to put a little blue in it so it's not as gray looking. And I'm just going to go in and do a little shading on the side of the little ball there. And wet it just a little to blend it in. Get a clean spot on my tissue here. And I can go around on this side and kind of make the fuzziness. So down here then I want to do it a little bit on the part around that goes around the head. So we'll do a little bit of light shading there. Be kind of careful how you do it. You can make it look a little textured. And I'll float in a little bit of extra fuzziness on the edge. And we'll do a little bit down here too. And we could do a little bit along the bottom edge. Just not make a solid line, but just make it look like it's fluffy, the fur. And that's kind of cute. I like that. And then I could just take my Sharpie marker, or you could take paint, and write your ho 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 on it. And look, you got a cute little card. So there's something fun you can try. That one's done. All right, let's do a wet in wet. I'll just do a sky here that we can put some trees over. I'll use my other blank card for this one. Remember, you can turn your cards this way, you can turn them this way, whatever you like. So I'm going to make one that has just a winter theme on it. So I'm going to do, again, some purple and blues. You can probably see my water there because it's getting dirty. I guess that'll help you in the video to be able to see what's going on. But I'm just painting with water, and then I'm just going to make like a snowbank at the bottom. So I'm just going to make kind of a slanted bottom edge to it. Stop it about here. I'm going to go in and put in some blue sky. And then if you remember, a graded wash, you can do this on a wet surface, is when you blend two colors together or blend out a color. I think I got too much. Need a little more water in that probably. And if you mess these up, I mean, you can practice them in your sketchbook first, and if you feel like, you know, they're not, until you want to put them on a card, practice your design. Okay, that's kind of a nice sky. And I'm just going to let that be dry for just a bit and come back to it. If you get a little puddle, remember, just take the edge of your tissue and just blot up a little bit of it. Okay, so I'm going to let that set off to the side, and I'm coming back to look at our snowman, what's happening with him. And look what the salt's doing. It's creating some texture in there that looks a little like little snowflakes coming down. I still can't dust that off. We need to leave that until it's completely dry. So I'm going to lay that one back, and we'll come back to it again, but it's doing the right thing. Okay, so let's look at, I have a little snowman. Oh, I know. I'm going to do this one. So this is going to incorporate dry brush, and we're going to do some wet in wet for the ornament itself. Do change out your water every so often. It's a good thing to have clean water, especially when you're doing an area that needs to have bright colors in it. Okay, so now I sketched this out, and if you can see it there, I put a little place where I want to have a reflection, a white reflection. So this is going to be reserving the whites. So I'm going to carefully paint around my little reflection areas. This will help make my ornament look a little 3D. And I'm going to paint carefully out to the edges of it. But stay around those little reflections. Let them be white. Okay, so now I have a wet surface that I can drop some color into. Now I'm going to be kind of careful because I don't want it overrunning my reflections. But I think I'm going to kind of stick with red and yellow and green maybe. We'll see how it looks. So start with my red. I'm not going to get it as watery this time because my paper's wet. And I'm going to kind of work around that little reflection. And we're wet and wet, so I'm just letting it blend out there. Oops, got outside it a little bit. It's all right. I got a little bit of orange up here at the top. It's a glass ornament, and it's reflecting a bunch of colors of the lights and things off of it. bunch of yellow. Like I said, you kind of have to work quick or your paper will start to dry. And let's put a little green at the bottom over there, blue-green. Maybe blue, because I'm going to get some green, because I'm going to put blue on here, and I'll have some green in between. But I'm going to do some pine needles around it. So, okay, I like how that looks. You can always go back, add a little more, like blend more yellows into it, or just kind of go quickly. If you don't like that texture up in there, you can smooth it out just a little. All right, I'm going to let that dry now and come back to it in just a couple minutes. In the meantime, I have another little snowman design. This one is, I may need that, is a little snowman looking up in the sky. And we're going to do a little wet and wet with him, and if I can find it, I'm going to show you a little trick with crayon. This is a white crayon, which you don't have in your kit, but if you have any crayons or little brothers and sisters at home, they may have a crayon, a white crayon. I'm going to go in here and just make some little marks, not too heavy, kind of random. I can't see where I'm making them anyway, so. And I could even put a couple, like where his hat's going to be. Be careful, you might get them a little big. They may look like snowballs instead of snowflakes. All right, so you can't see them, but I am going to, again, float some water in there. And I'm going to be careful around my snowman. So I have to kind of work around his nose there. Water all the way down to the ground. So this will be our sky for the sky. And I'm not going to make this one as dark as I did the other one. I'm going to make it like a daytime sky. So I'm going to take my palette here, get some clean spot for my blue. Add a little water, and we'll see how it goes here. And I might, see my little snowflakes showing through. Oops, I got in his nose there, but I think I'll be able to cover that. The crayon will keep the watercolor from sticking, so you'll have some little snowflakes falling down there if you want. And then you can combine techniques. I might, while I'm doing this, get this painted. Oops, a little puddle there. So again, I'm reserving the whites, painting out around my snowman and the little. Okay. So while this is wet, then I could sprinkle a little bit of salt on there just to see what happens. Gives it a little frosty look, and we'll come back to that. So let him dry. I'm going to touch up a couple of places where it looks like I need to. Get in a little closer to the snowman. Looking good. All right, so this one now has dried, and we have kind of an interesting texture up there. And I'm going to paint his nose and finish up his little face. So I'm going to add give him a little color on his cheeks, just a little bit of pink. Let's do that here and here, just like giving rosy cheeks. We'll let that dry. Work on his nose. Oops. Give him a nice bright carrot nose there. And I'm going to dry that real quick. So when that's completely dry, dropped my brush, you can take the salt, you can kind of knock the salt off of there. You don't want to give it with the salt, and you'll have a little interesting looking sky that the snowman is looking up at. Makes a mess with your salt. And I'm going to go in then with Sharpie marker and just make his eyes and his smile. And I think I could go in, I don't know if this work or not. You could put white crayon over it and add a few little snowflakes. You could do that before you did the wash, whatever. Or you can flip paint if you have white, and we do have some white watercolor here at school, so you can actually splatter some snowflakes on it. That always looks good. Oh, and I'm going to go in with my little narrower Sharpie marker and give his nose a little bit of more carrot looking. And he's done. So don't forget to turn your cards over and on the back write your name. Like Hallmark or American Greetings. Okay, we're coming back to revisit a couple of these. Whoa, there's my camera. I think our first tree is dry now. Some of these I didn't have space to lay them, and they're dripping all over the place, but yeah, this is almost dry. But we can, again, I don't know if I want to dry it with a hairdryer. If you're careful, you can blot it off a little bit. You get some interesting designs. You could go into this one with Sharpie. I think I'll use the wide one maybe. And add some decorations, or I don't know, whatever you want. You could add some little birds on the outside of it. You could write Merry Christmas across the bottom, or you could do that with paint if you wanted to. Whatever, it's up to you. You can go back and embellish things with markers and pencils and whatever you have. I think this one might be dry enough. I will dry just a little. Make sure. So this one I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to do a silhouette of some pine trees. This will be the snow area. And I want to make, let's see, let's make this. I'm going to draw where my pine trees are going to be with my marker. Let's make a tall one. And, well, we'll try 3 and we'll see how that looks. So then I'm just going to kind of go back and forth. Now I want the top to look like it's pointy. I'm not going to go out too far. I'm just going to scribble back and forth and leave some branches stick out till I get down to my snow line. And maybe I'll put another little one here since my trees are turning out. I want them to kind of be like a little forest or woods line there. Okay, make this one start down a little farther. The Sharpie's kind of fun over watercolor. You can do a lot of things, add a lot of details. So like it's a silhouette, so it's going to be dark. maybe, yeah, maybe just one. Maybe one over here, just far away, little one, back in the back. Oh. Now on this one I will go grab some white watercolor and show you what you can do if you're in the classroom sometimes with that, because you don't have it in your kit. Now white watercolor is not transparent like other watercolor. It's more like almost like whiteout. And you probably could take a whiteout pen if you have one at home, or some brush on whiteout, and you could do basically the same thing I'm going to do here. So first, this paint that comes out of the tubes is thick, so I'm going to add some water. And I'm going to go in and put some snow on my branches. And I know you may not be able to do this right away, but I wanted to show you. Oops. It's sticking to my Sharpie there. Look, it is. Like the trees it's snowed and the trees are gathering a little bit of accumulated snow on their branches. Make this one stand out a little more. Okay. And then you can mix this up a little bit more watery. And you can splatter it. Now you want to be careful, because if you get it too watery, then you'll get giant snowballs falling instead of what looks like snow. You could probably do this with a little white acrylic if you watered it down. And you may have white acrylic, craft paint. Just water it down a bit. Just make sure you wash it out of your brushes good. So there's my little trees watercolor. I like that. Turned out pretty good. Okay, we'll come back to this one. I'm going to just, I don't know if my salt showed up too much on that one because it wasn't very dark. But anyway, we have a little, and I got a drip across here on my snowman, but that's okay. Whatever. I'm going to round him up a little bit with just a little bit of blue shading. Let's put a little bit on here. So that bottom would be shaded anyway, so it'll look all right. Just go with your, like Bob Ross says, go with your happy accidents and don't worry too much about them. Got his head tipped back. You can make him however you want. Okay, so I'll put a little blue on there to kind of shade him a little. And I'm going to do his carrot nose next. Okay. And let's make his hat red and green. So let's do some really bold green on the edge of it. Oops, we may blend out a little here because I'm not waiting to dry it. He's going to have a green chin, I guess. I'll blot a little and get rid of some of that. And I think I'll make the end of it green too. And this is where if you use your hair dryer, you could dry and speed things along. I don't know if that's completely dry, but maybe close enough. All right, so I'm going to do the hat in red, make it more Christmassy. A little bolder red. And then I'm going to use dry brush to create his arms. And dry brush just means we're using the paint much less watery. And that hat probably would have just painted over the blue background, so you probably could just paint the whole blue background first. Let's dry his hat real quick. both. Ooh, that's really a lot of paint there. To draw his little arms on, so just make them like little sticks out here. And just make his buttons black, coal, oh, purple. Easy to get mixed up. You don't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to paint this, use one of my little brushes, just where brush with a good point comes in. And sometimes they get, that one I'm using has a little, like one of the brush hairs is sticking out on it. If you get rid of that, that helps. So either pull it out or cut it off. You want a brush that comes to a good point. Can't get that one off. And do his smile. So there, it's a little happy snowman. And you could decorate him how you wanted. So that one's done. This one, we have our snowman here, I have a wreath, and I need to come back to this one. Oh, we have our hat too. So for this one now, this is dry. We got kind of a ball that looks like it's got a nice little reflection on it. So let's do some little tree branches here. So let's get a little bit of green going. How we can do this. I'm going to make it kind of bright first, then we'll go back with the darker green to detail it. Oops, sorry, I was sliding down there, or else my camera has moved on me again. Okay, so let's just use that where you pull your stroke towards you. Now you have to be kind of careful when you get up here to the ornament, unless you don't care. It can come over the ornament. It's not a problem. This is the one it's hanging on. So see, I'm using that little stroke we learned in the brush strokes video. Lightly. Now this one I think I'll try to make it stay behind it, so I'll be careful here. Okay. Okay, so I'm letting those dry just a tad. I'm going to use a little red and yellow to make the top of my ornament kind of gold-like. Got out there a little bit, that's okay. And let's make the hook that it's hooked onto the tree branch with. There. Okay, so then a little bit darker green here. A little bit of black, remember, be cautious because it goes quick here. Now some darker pine needles. I can make these look a little bit more interesting. This will make it give it a little more of a 3D appearance. And again, I'm going to go kind of careful. I'll go back the other way here a little bit. Maybe darken that a little bit, please. And then work my way down here. Darker. Turn your paper however it works best for you. I paint things upside down sometimes just because it's easier. Get your hand where you want to. Okay, And then I could go back once my gold is dry up there. Do a little bit darker gold in there to make it look, it has little ridges in it. And there, that's done. So, looks pretty good. If you have glitter at home, you could add glitter to your cards. Do all kinds of different things. So, trees, fun little colorful tree, snowman, another snowman, and a Santa hat. So, hope you have fun with that. And that's the end of my lesson for right now. I'm going to come back to you with one for landscapes later.